Hi, I'm Mary Burke-Kelly, and this is a demonstration video for my students in Level 4 Acutonics for the Chiron Nibiru install. When we have an install, we don't deviate from the protocol, so that's all listed in your material on Google Classroom if you're taking this via Zoom, and we don't deviate from the steps in an install. And basically our purpose here is to install the frequencies of Chiron and Nibiru together, and we'll be doing that install through all the nervous system and the organ systems by using the Watu Jaji points, and also we'll be installing those frequencies into the microcosmic orbit, which involves the dew and the Ren. Even though on level 4, hopefully you know where these points are in this install, because it's points that have been used a lot in levels 1, 2, and 3. Just in case you're coming in from other teachers or you haven't had time to work with these things, I will go ahead and include some close-ups on point location prior to showing you the fork techniques. Whenever you have a session where you already know what you're going to do, that it's all planned out like this one in steps, it can go a lot faster. If you don't know where the points are because you don't work with them very often, is if you take your stickers and go ahead and mark the points first, and then you can just go ahead and just use the forks and have a smoother flow in your install. Of course, the first point that you're going to be using is kidney 1 gushing spring. You're going to be using either 2 low ohms or ohm octave to be grounding. So hopefully you know where kidney 1 is by this time, but I've got them marked where kidney 1 is. So the Watu Jaji points run all the way down the spine in the spaces in between the spinous processes of the vertebra. Now, technically, Watu Jaji points start like mid-cervical, or but in most Acutonics practitioners go ahead and start on the cervical vertebra on both sides of that with the tuning forks, because it's just a lot of relaxation and release, and you're talking to all those organ systems. And then you come all the way down. In Acutonics, we don't take the clothes off. Some of you might have modalities where you do, but we're going to come all the way down with our fork on both sides up against that backbone, those spinous processes. And then we're also going to include the sacrum. So the sacrum is not the Watu Jaji points, it's their own points, but we're going to go ahead and run those forks right down through those foramen of the sacrum. If you're not exactly on those foramen, that's okay, because the sound will go into those acupuncture points and you'll be fine. But we want to make sure that we do the Watu Jajis and the sacrum in this install, because all of that is really installing these frequencies. The sacrum is an important bone that has RNA, DNA, and takes charge of a lot of our changes and transitions. So on an install like this, I like to lay out all my forks on a tray in advance, so I don't have to be looking for them, and I have a tendency to put them in the order that is on the install directions. So you've got your ohms first that we're going to ground with, and things are going to kind of go in this order. So I kind of have them laid out almost like pre-surgical tools. And starting the install, just like we do with all Acutonics sessions, the very first thing that you want to do is take your low ohm unison. That means 2 low ohms, or if you don't have that, You can put the low one with the mid one. And we want to go ahead and activate the forks. And if you're doing distance, you would hold it up to your microphone at your computer, so the person on the other end can kind of hear that and get used to it. If you have a real person, a body, we go ahead and we put those ohms next to their ears a little bit. If you want to be fancy, you can go ahead and put them in the fields. And this is part of the grounding process. And ground on kidney 1, so you can start with 2 on 1 and 1 point, and you wait until the vibration almost completely dissipates into the point, and then you reactivate and do the other ones. You want to try and make sure that each point possibly gets 3 iterations. So I have a tendency to do 2 forks on one foot, 2 forks on another foot, and then I kind of like to leave them with 1 fork on each. So because this is an install, it will be important if you can remember to go ahead and take each interval and let the person hear it a little bit before you come down on the body. So your protocol or your install calls for, it's always going to be, you're going to notice the same pattern where we're going to install Chiron ohm first, then we're going to be doing Nibiru ohm, and then we'll be putting the 2 colored forks together of Chiron Nibiru. So we're going to start with the Huatu, Jajis, and the sacrum. So you're going to do just mid-octave on the Huatu, Jajis, and the sacrum. And so I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to activate the ohm first, and then the Chiron, because that gives me the interval that we want. I'm putting it in the mic. If it's a distance, if it's a person, go ahead and let them hear it a little bit by the ears. And then we'll go ahead and we're going to run this down 3 times through the Huatu Jaji points. I have a tendency to like to weave back and forth with the 2 forks, and when you lose the vibration, you have to reactivate, of course, and start where you left off and by the ears. And then we'll go ahead and we're going to run this down 3 times through the Huatu Jaji points. I have a tendency to like to weave back and forth with the 2 forks, and when you lose the vibration, you have to reactivate, of course, and start where you left off and continue down. And all that means, if the vibration leaves the forks at some point or quickly, is that the person is deficient in the interval that you're giving them, and they actually need it. So it's actually a good sign. If the person, it just means they're deficient. If you're working on a real body, see now I'm coming down through the sacrum, as far as that vibration dissipating, for some people it will be soaked in very quickly. That just indicates that they're deficient and they really need the energy. If a person doesn't soak it in very much, that doesn't mean that they don't want it or that it's not going to be helpful to them. It just means that they're not deficient in that particular energy. So after you've had your 3 passes of the Chiron ohm interval, now you're going to set down the green and you're going to pick up the maroon colored Nibiru with the ohm, and now we're going to go ahead and we're going to install the mid ohm and the mid Nibiru 3 times down the Huatu Jaji points in the sacrum. I'm going to activate the ohm first and then the Nibiru and go ahead and apply these. now that you've installed the mid Nibiru, you're going to put the ohm down and pick back up the mid Chiron. So now comes the Chiron Nibiru microtone install into the nervous system, organ system, and sacrum. These are very, very close to the same note, so you can activate the green one first and then the Nibiru. That's what I've been trained to do. If you listen to them and you think it should be the other way around, they're a microtone, so it's very, very close. I'm going to go ahead and let that sound go into the microphone for my distance partner or my distance client. If I have an in-person client, I'm going to have them hear them at their ears a little bit. So now you will go down the Watu Jaji points and the sacrum. I'm going to use a weaving motion. You can use whatever technique you prefer. I have to reactivate because he was absorbing those. And you're going to do that with 3 passes of this interval. So we've just installed the Chiron Nibiru through the Watu Jajis and the sacrum. So now you're going to ask your partner, or if you're doing this for someone else, you're going to have them turn over, or you're going to turn your surrogate over if you're doing distance. And we're going to do the anterior portion of the Chiron Nibiru install. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and show point location for the anterior points for the Chiron Nibiru install. We're going to be doing the dew and the Ren, and the two of them together make the microcosmic orbit. The main point for the dew is going to be small intestine 3, and you can find that by going behind the knuckle of the baby finger down on the side of the hand, and there's this pooch, usually indentation right there. That is small intestine 3 back ravine. All small intestine points, all of them, run along the line of the 2 different skin colors. No matter what race you're working with, there will be a lighter skin tone and a darker skin tone, and that happens to be where the small intestine meridian runs. So I'm going to go ahead and mark that with a colored sticky because this is the opening point to the dew. This is where we want to put the colored fork, and when we're placing forks down, we want to put the colored fork on this point a few seconds before we put the ohm fork down so that the body knows that we're talking to the dew and not its partner. Marking the balance point, I'm going to go contralateral for the dew. I've already marked its opening point, and contralateral on the other ankle. It's the lateral or outside malleolus, right below the malleolus, like at the 6 o'clock position. If they're standing, these little tendons that are there is where you're going to put the ohm fork when we're activating the dew. So I'll mark that with a white sticker. So the opening point for the Ren is on the styloid, right below the styloid process of the ulna. So the way you can find that is it's as if you want their arm to be in a position like you're shaking hands with them. So you want this bone on the inside, on the thumb side, to be sticking up for you, and you can run your finger down and it will come off this big hump, which is the styloid process, And when it comes off the hump, all right, that is your lung 7, happens to be called broken sequence because there's kind of breaks there. It's a broken sequence, and that's where you're going to put the colored fork for the wren. The balance point for the wren is on the medial malleolus, so the inside ankle bone, also at the 6 o'clock position, or if they're standing, it's right at the bottom of the medial malleolus, and that is where you're going to put the ohm fork for the wren. So that's kit 6, shining C. I'll put a white sticker, no color, because we're not using a colored fork there. So I've gone ahead and marked all my anterior points, and now I'm ready to go ahead and just apply the tuning forks for the Chiron Nibiru install. So you'll notice on your directions for this install that there's going to end up being 9 applications of intervals, and whenever you're dealing with some of the same type of forks, you don't have to do as many iterations. So we'll just be placing these one time. We're not going to be placing them 3 times. Notice that there's a pattern in your directions for this install where you're going to start with low, medium, high frequency, low, medium, high frequency. And we start out with Chiron ohm, so the person gets installed those energies. Then we do the Nibiru ohm because they're getting used to those energies. And then our final 3 on that particular extraordinary vessel will then be low, medium, high frequency of the 2 colored forks together, the Chiron Nibiru. I'm going to start with our wren. Our wren is our antenna. It goes up our entire spine and through our brain, so we'll start with that. And we're going to start with the low Chiron Nibiru. So I'm going to go ahead and activate the ohm, activate the Chiron, and they've heard these before, so you don't have to do them, constantly, but I kind of do the low ones first at the get-go. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to place the colored lime green Chiron on the small intestine great ravine, and then I'm going to slightly second later, I'm going to place down a second later the ohm on its contralateral balance point of bladder 62. And you'll let the vibrations go in on a real person. If you're doing distance, you can always be saying in your head that the person on the other end absorbs the most beneficial amount of the vibration that you're sending, and then you don't have to gauge when to take the forks off the surrogate that you're using on distance. So now we're going to go ahead and put the mid Chiron octave into the do. I tap my ohm, I tap my Chiron, I put my Chiron mid on the opening point of small intestine 3, and I put the balance point contralateral on bladder 62. Now you're just going to do the same thing with the Nibiru. You go low, medium, high, still on the do. The final three intervals for the do are the microtone of Chiron with Nibiru. We have a tendency to put the Chiron on the opening point, the Nibiru on the balance point, but if you feel that it should be switched, then go ahead and switch it. We're only going to do each interval one time, just like we've done all the other ones one time. So I like to think that when we're using Chiron with Nibiru, we're going ahead and we're bringing up any wounds on any levels, but we're repatterning and healing them with ease and grace when we put it with Nibiru. We've gone from the dense physical body, deep low, we've gone to the mid octave, which is more immediate, and now we're going to take it to the fields with the install. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to tap my Chiron and tap my Nibiru, and I'm going to hold the head facing down over the points and kind of twist them. And that's how the sound is in the field, but it goes into and around the field of that point. And we just do that one time. And now we'll be doing the exact same sequence of the intervals on the Ren, the other half of the microcosmic orbit. So again, you'll be low, medium, high, low, medium, high. The Chiron Chiron goes on the opening point, then the Nibiru and then the two of them together. It's just a replication, but now on the Ren, which is our grounding in of the frequencies. We've done the do, which is in the antenna that brings in these new frequencies, and now we're going to ground it in through the Ren. Basically installing all these frequencies into the Sea of Yang, the Sea of Yin. So we're making sure all of that goes in there, and remember that the Ren and the do go through all your chakras. Goes through, it addresses all your endocrine glands that are associated with each chakra. So you're installing quite a bit of these new frequencies into some very important areas of the person. So low Chiron Nibiru. The low Chiron colored fork goes on lung 7 and contralateral coming over with the onto kid 6, shining C. One iteration. Chiron high frequency Chiron low Nibiru Nibiru goes on lung 7 and goes on kid 6. Mid Nibiru always the colored fork for the Ren on lung 7 broken sequence, always on kid 6, contralateral, one time, one iteration. High frequency Nibiru on the Ren. Chiron Nibiru microtone on the Ren, low. Low Chiron on lung 7. Nibiru on kid 6. One iteration. Mid Chiron Nibiru on the Ren. High frequency Chiron Nibiru on the Ren. On the extended grid pattern, at the end, we're treating these fields and we're installing these frequencies into the fields because that's important as well. So they have you starting out with the high frequency Chiron, so that's the longer of the two ohms. And you're going to go ahead and you activate the activate the Chiron, and then you can start mid-body and you kind of just pull them out vertically over the body or over a surrogate if you're using a surrogate in distance, and you're extending out the grids, and then you can go ahead and do it, start mid-body and then go ahead and extend them out horizontally. And so that's the technique that they're referring to. And first we install that into the grids with Chiron ohm. Then we're going to put into the grids the Nibiru with the ohm with the same technique. And it doesn't matter if you do horizontal first or vertical first, just do whatever you feel like doing, whatever your intuition tells you to do. If you feel like, hey, I need to put some with the colored fork in the other direction, just go ahead and do it, but it pretty much does what it needs to do. Because your final install then is the high frequency Chiron and the high frequency Nibiru in the fields. Starting at mid-body It can be over Ren 4, it can be over central pelvic, stomach 25, the umbilicus, and you're just going to extend these grids out in a horizontal and vertical plane is basically what you're doing. Well, right before we ground, we're going to put some intervals on Ren 4. So to remind you where Origins Pass is, or Ren 4, that's you find your client's navel and measure 4 of their finger widths, proportionate. Everything is proportionate down from the navel on the midline, and that's going to be your Ren 4. So a trick that you can do is before you start this, you can have your client point to the navel and put a stone, on that navel, and then that way when you come to like this point, you're not poking around about what is 4 finger widths down from there. So that's location of Ren 4. We're going to go ahead and put these energies into Ren 4 or Origins Pass because that gives us access to the kidney, Jing, the blueprint, the DNA for these energies. So the first interval that we're putting on is going to be low. We're going to be using low to put it into Origins Pass. And it's going to be the low octave ohm with the Chiron, making it the second. And you could go ahead and just do this for one iteration because you've put a lot of this energy already on the Ren that's kind of running down through here. If for some reason your intuition tells you, well, I should do 3 iterations of this interval, go ahead and do it, time allowing. For the class, keep an eye on your time for how long it's taking you. Then go ahead and we're going to put the Chiron down and we're going to do the Ohm Nibiru third low octave into Ren 4. I'm just going to do one iteration here. And of course, if you're working on a real person, you're waiting for the vibration to almost dissipate into the body. And if you're working on distance, you've used intention for them to absorb the optimal amount. So then you're gonna use the Chiron with the Nibiru like we have been throughout this whole install. And that's gonna go into your Ren 4. And then it calls for you to use ohm octave. So that's going to be your low ohm with your mid ohm. And there's big space between these two sounds. There's like 7 sounds or 7 notes in here. So that gives the person plenty of room to have a comfortable shift into grounding. This is actually going to be kind of the beginning of our grounding when you think about it, because we're right here at the core of the body. We can start our grounding up here if we want to. So if you want to do this for 1 iteration or you want to do this for 3, that's perfectly acceptable with the ohm octave. And then right after that, you're just going to like ground. So the final step, just as in all Acutonics sessions, is to go ahead and ground the person. So I like using 2 low ohms, low ohm unison, or ohm octave. If you don't have these, you want to kind of let the person hear the ohm, so they kind of start grounding just by hearing it. You would put it in a microphone. You can put it in the field if you would like. And then you're going to go ahead and do at least 3 iterations on that Kid 1 gushing spring, because we want to make sure that with all this work that we've done, that we're grounding the person and bringing them back to earth, back into their body if they got relaxed enough when they went somewhere.